from there, we'll see how it goes. We're a little delay in the system setting it up. But this letter or this note was from a lady, and she was talking about it was an intro through a song. And so the song is it's like 15 years ago, and it was done by Trace Atkins. It basically was all about you're gonna miss this. That was kind of the theme of the song. And I'd looked up the words. We listened to it. I looked up the words and kind of thought about it a bit. And so we want to share some thoughts. We've gone off to our separate corners since we talked, and so she doesn't know what I she doesn't know what I'm thinking, and I don't know what she's thinking. So we'll see how it goes. But this letter, basically, I'm trying to look it up. I apologize. I'm not exactly seeing it. But it basically was talking about how we're going to miss. It's going through this thing about they're turning 18. They're wanting to move ahead. They're all excited about life ahead. And the question was about missing those fun times, like your child is 4 or 5, and you play dolls with them because they won't be playing dolls down the road. And so it's that kind of game of what do you do about that? And in particular, she said, I'm going to find this letter. I'm going to let Jody talk, and I'm going to find it. I don't know why it's not coming.
Well, she had 3 little ones, 10 and under, I believe, if I'm remembering right. And just how we thought about, how Fred and Jody thought about the different stages of our kids, and do we have regrets or misses that,
well,
not regrets
no,
much as
no, in particular, she was saying, I'll get the letter up. She was saying she noticed that we don't
right,
regret. So keep going. I'm sorry.
So yes, she said it doesn't seem like that we do when we're online with y'all, and she was wondering about that for us and just how to think. She was just said, how should I think about that kind of thing? And so like Fred said, good question, good thoughts. On that.
That's a separate letter. I'm wondering if it came in through, sometimes these things come through different mailboxes, so I'll figure it out. But yeah, how do you think about, you look back on life? Here's the common thing I'll say to Jody. I'll see old movies or see old pictures when the kids were little, and I'll ask what I ask them.
Did I enjoy that
Yeah.
time with them?
Yeah, did I enjoy that? Did we enjoy that?
We had fun then.
Was that good?
Yeah.
Because I don't reminisce much at all. And part of that could be personality. I know part of it is my philosophy or the way I think about life. And I'm going to share that in a minute. But as you're pondering this, one piece of it is obviously you want to seize the moment and enjoy the moment you're in. But do we really want to go back and say things like we miss those days, or do we miss those times? And that's what this particular letter was getting at, that we can miss those particular times. And so we want to explore that with you, because this is, I think, a real thing for people to have the challenge of seeing their babies grow up. I can't tell you how many mothers have told me in the course of life, just in coaching, counseling, pastor, whatever I've done, and they'll say things. I'm thinking of Julie Green right now, how they miss their baby boy, because at some point, once they add testosterone to their baby boys, the boys change, and they're not cuddly, and they're not always sweet, and it can turn out to be kind of something that is missed. Okay, so here's the letter. I don't know where it came, so I don't know what happened. So she said, I'm listening to you on YouTube. Sometimes I can't make it. She's been listening since 2020, 3, 4 years, I guess. My husband and I recently heard this song that talks about you're going to miss these days and want them back. I don't hear you all talk of many regrets, and it seems like you have fully enjoyed each stage of life with your children, even though they are no longer home and younger. I would love for you both to share your thoughts on this, as I've seen similar ideas go around on social media. Of course, there are things to miss as your children grow, but there are also many wonderful things that come with each stage. As a mom of three littles, all under 10, I would love your advice and thoughts. Yeah, so that's the setup, the game. So how do you think about stages and, in what sense do you miss anything if you do, and why not?
Oh my goodness. Well, I do think I'll put this caveat out there. I do think there is a difference in male and female thoughts on this. But even saying that, I think that there's a better perspective than some moms have. Um, and so my thought, I mean, and one, you're just can be so busy that you're kind of missing those different stages with your kids. So I think, seize the moment, grab the day, enjoy their time with them. But as we've said so many times, and Fred's going to talk about this more too, we don't want to get like that be kind of a glue in our life for a day, because we are trying to move them toward adulthood. And I don't know if that even made sense, but I can just see sometimes one person that Fred was looking at online was saying, oh, they take every minute that they can, anytime their little children want to do any kind of imaginative play, they're right there with them.
Mm.
Well, that could be your whole day. And maybe that's not what this mom meant, but it's like, no, at some point life's happening. And yes, do that some, but they are meant to grow up. I mean, I can remember different moms falling apart the day their child went off to kindergarten, and so.
Yeah, and it's not like we don't feel sad. There's a kind of regret at those moments, but it's a good kind of regret. It's, kind of like better have loved than lost and never to have loved at all. But it's a good kind of regret because you realize there's a transition. There can be some sadness, but it's kind of a happy sadness. Um, I've been with people in their passing. I'd say that with mother, that there was a happy sadness to it because she had suffered a great deal in those last days, and had lived way longer than we expected. And so, and then you feel guilty because you feel happy because you feel relief. But, with her, um, in my mind, I'm going to see her again someday. So there's something to look forward to. And there's another piece, which is I understand that, or I did, she's not coming back. And so part of the challenge with missing stuff and that longing is we can almost trick ourselves into thinking there's some hope of recovering it. And what I've found is that when we know we can't have something, we don't long for it anymore. And so some of it is learning to be honest with ourselves. But I can say we have not gone through much of a life regretting the different stages or the passing. And we certainly don't go back, and you can listen to the song, look at it, and it's all about you're going to miss this, and I look back and I go, I don't think I do. I appreciate it. I would say those words. I'm glad for it. That was a good thing.
I enjoyed that period of time with my child. I love 3-year-olds. I just think they're precious because they can do so much on their own, but they're not babies anymore. But they still love on you. And so, do I miss that? It's more like that was fun. I enjoy that. Those are some of my
and it's sort of like we have romantic ideas about life, things that just sound great, romantic and wonderful, like world peace and can't we all just get along and whatever it is? But it doesn't help us play right with reality when we have kind of a dysfunctional romantic view of things. So here's where I'm coming from. We'll see what Jody thinks. But there's a verse in the book of Ecclesiastes. So this is wisdom literature, a lot of smart stuff. It's kind of a it's almost like the blues music. So blues, the way I think about it is it's about feeling good, about feeling bad, you know. And Ecclesiastes is that kind of book. It's like, oh, this is way too sobering. And yet when you grasp it, it gives you profound perspective. You know, you can walk away and forget it or shake it over your head like an etch a sketch, excuse me, and make it go away. But in the moment you're thinking about it, so here's a verse, chapter 7, verse 10, and it says this: do not say, why is it that the former days were better than these? For it is not from wisdom that you ask about this. And I see this as very similar. The good old days. I miss the good old days. And that is not wise, partly because you're not going to get them back. And also because you don't have what you really need, which is a forward-looking mindset. You need to be looking forward. You know, I would say if Jody really misses 3-year-olds, why don't you go teach them church, babysit, hang out, make some friends with 3-year-olds. Of course, she has 3-year-old grandchildren, so she bumps into them. But it's a forward-looking, and that's why we say we were trying to raise, grow, mature, put in the world happy adults. So that forward-looking game, you know, what's next? Forward-looking. What's next? Forward-looking. Even towards deathbed, hopefully you're looking forward to what is next. Otherwise, you're caught in what Solomon says here is not from wisdom when you ask about the good old days. You know, let's go to the good old days. And that's not the same as taking a good period of time and let's recreate it in the future. That's good future days. It may have similarities, you know, like a vacation. I can think of that. Like our vacations were all very similar, and we always vacation the same place, and we wanted to build memories deep in the kids and real connection with the events. So they would think about vacation, they'd all blend together. You know, it wasn't this vacation where we went there or whatever. And they're different philosophies. I'm not pitching that, but I am saying that you can build, like the next vacation we want to do things we find fun and maybe some new stuff. So you can build a future, but it's always that future looking. If you go around thinking that the past is when you peaked, that's just depressive or depressing. So, and Jody has a favorite example of that.
When I was going out to college, several of my parents' friends were like, oh, you're going to enjoy it so much. It's so great. It was the best time of my life. I mean, over and over again. And I'm just sitting there thinking, if I'm about to peak, this is going to be the best time of my life this next 3 or 4 years. That's kind of weird. I'm like, I felt sad for those grown-ups. Now, whether they meant it that way or not, but some of them, it sure sounded like it. But that was that.
Yeah.
And Fred's not saying, we're not saying don't embrace today. Don't just always be looking so far ahead in the distance that you're missing and you're not involved in what's going on right now. It's just, if you spend time being sorrowful in a way about the past, that's not really going to help you or anybody else.
Yeah. And honestly, there's some of our past stuff was shoo. Like, I just don't ever remember us saying, man, I just miss diapering those children. You know, just wish I could just diaper them a few more times. Whenever we got somebody out of diapers, we got a raise, our life got better, they could function better. So there's that piece. Hey, this song. So let me read some of the lyrics here. she was staring out the window of her SUV, complaining, saying, I can't wait to turn 18. She says, I'll make my own money and I'll make my own rules. And mama put the car in park out there in front of the school, and she kissed her head and said, I was just like you, but you're going to miss this. You're going to want this back. You're going to wish these days hadn't gone by so fast. I guess that rhymes. Near Trace Atkins with his voice. There are some good times. These are good times. So take a good look around. You may not know it now, but you're going to miss this. So, and it goes on. You're going to want it back. You're going to wish these days hadn't gone by fast. It kind of reiterates, it gives some examples. And here's the thing. No, I'd say you're going to appreciate it. That's what we've done. But I don't look at it regret. I mean, you can do two things. You live in the present, and you can look at the past, and you can look at bad things in the past, and you can be depressed. Okay. Now you can look in the future, and if you think it's all going to be terrible and anxious, and if you don't feel that way, just watch the news a little bit. They'll get you there. But the future, if it's bad, is going to be anxiety producing. And what you want to do is live from the present towards what's ahead. And you want to be thinking about what's ahead, like what's a goal, but with the present in mind. You can enjoy the moment. I think that's great also. But even when I stop and enjoy moments and just pause and enjoy them, they're still related to me for how the future is going to be impacted. That I learned to pause. I learned to smell the rose. I learned to watch the hummingbirds drink something. And it was a good moment that helps my soul for what's in the future. But it's not an orientation that I'm looking back all the time. We're looking back with the kids. We're looking ahead. We're looking for what they're going to do in life, what they're going to get to, what if they have kids, if they have certain careers, if they have moments of impact, if they're moments ahead when we can connect again, a meal or a party or, celebration, birthdays, that kind of stuff. So all those things are about looking ahead and not about spending an orientation or time thinking, oh, I just missed that. I wish we could go back. I've noticed this with like weddings. It's similar to what Jody said, that wedding day is your special day. And and I'm not saying it's not a special day, but I am saying that if that's what you live for, that it peaks, your best days are college, your best days your wedding day, that marriage is going to be pretty stinky, because what you're wanting is something better ahead. And so and this is my own theory, but I think I've seen at least some, particularly women, who, because the wedding is so awesome, they wind up having two or three of them. I don't think that's the only motive, but I don't think it's not a motive, because it's all full of hope and tension on you, and you look your prettiest, and people come and celebrate, and it's a special moment, but it's a means to something ahead that you want to build toward and get better. And so the same in homeschooling, there's this process and progress. While we didn't have regrets of saying, here's what we're headed towards, it's not this moment and try to keep them in this moment. When you do that, you do wacky things. I remember, I don't know why this came to mind, but there was an old TV show called oh goodness, the movie was Homecoming. John Boy and all. What they call that?
Oh, the Waltons.
The Waltons. Thank you. Seems like the Homecoming was the movie that
Maybe
was based
something.
on. And there's one where the daughter, I don't know, a little redheaded girl, I don't know any of this. It's been forever, and I hardly watched it. But it was something about squeezing a duck's head, and then she was caught squeezing her own head, and it was all about wanting to stay young.
I wanted
Like,
to keep it a little duckling and not let it grow up.
yeah, and whoever killed it or something like that. And so there's this lesson, I guess, in the Waltons about no, time moves on and you keep growing. And understanding that allows not for regret, but to say, and now what's next? And what is going to be good that I want to build toward in the future? Look, all of life, it's always about some kind of goal that you have. And if you're not eager to achieve it, it's not a good goal for you. You want to set things that you're eager for. So even having the kids leave home, we're eager for that, but we had the right kind of regret, like, well, this is a little sad. It's a transition. We're not going to quite be the same, but we're also going to be a lot new. And so I think that ongoing orientation about the future is why I don't spend a lot of time in my own thinking, reminiscing, regretting, or missing much of anything. I think I appreciate what we had for that moment. I appreciate the kids being excited about Christmas or whatever. I appreciate all that stuff. But it's not a thing that I would say I spend time missing.
I would totally agree with you on that. And like I said, I think women are maybe a little more tend to be that way, and which is, you know, now and then to get a little, you know, a little bit that way, great. But if you're staying there, if you're stuck there, I don't, like I said before, it's not really going to be beneficial to you or others, or also even if bad things. I mean, today is today, and that's all we have. And then hopefully there will be some future that we're looking forward.
Yep. So questions, shoot us questions. And it could be on this topic or anything.
Right.
So, and this is a good one. And I've got one other thing I probably want to throw out a little later, but any questions you got, let's talk about them, think about them out loud here. So, the question is, it's kind of three parts here because unless you put so much in, any ideas on how to get a 7 and 9-year-old out of bed on their own without playing/fighting? Love your get each other up idea, but we have a task-based school system rather than a set amount of hours. I can't think of any good incentives without setting up a whole reward point system. The eldest is ADHD too, and makes it more challenging. I have to hover and control. Can you read that? Which?
Sorry, there's a heart over it.
Yeah.
Trying to get
Which I'm trying to get away from.
Oh.
Yeah, I have to hover and control. Yeah, and I would highly recommend you get away from hovering and controlling because they need to leave your home someday. So you're thinking right, and those challenges, I'm not sure what the ADHD thing has to do with it, about getting up, but it may be getting on a task or something like that. So it all may be together. So you have a 7 and a 9-year-old playing or fighting. I guess it could be boy, girl, two girls, but it sounds like two boys.
It does.
I mean, just, my bias and my experience. Yeah. So how do you get kids up? And part of that is it's really more of a question of how do you get kids to do anything on a consistent basis. So it's going to be about obedience and get with the program, like get up, brush your teeth, step away from the curb, and even some of these things you don't want to keep having to say brush your teeth. At some point you ought to be able to say get ready for bed, and then things get done. So trying to understand your own unique situation, maybe more detail would help. But what I think you want to start with is explaining exactly what your expectations are for the kids. Like, do they have a time to get up, or do they have sort of a range of when to get up? I'm not sure what a task-based system is. I would guess, your version of it, I would guess is something like they have a certain number of tasks to do in a day and they can do them when they want to. They have to get them done. So that's that kind of thing that doesn't have deadlines in it. Even there, it doesn't have to be exactly a schedule, but without a deadline, there's no real focus. And this is true for ADHD, ADOS, attention deficit, squirrel, what I have. So it's really starting with getting clear expectations. So here's what we expect from you in a day. We expect you to get up at this time. And getting up means and getting ready for the day. We're not playing, we're not fighting, we're not in a battle or anything. We're getting up. And so if they understand that, and then what the tasks are and when they need to be done by, I mean, you have a deadline, obviously. I assume, don't they have to be done by the end of the week, end of the month, end of the day, before lunch? I don't know. So, it can be task oriented, but it's still going to have time connected to it. And time is a focusing thing because it limits create focus. So I would start there with them just understanding it. And then what you're looking at for incentives is if something like getting them up is not the kind of thing I would think to incentivize for me.
No, and you've got two issues here. In my mind, it's two separate issues. I think I hear you saying you'd like them to wake up um at a consistent time, and then also that their behavior um it's not as better behavior. So I think, like Fred said, pick a time you want them to get up and make that getting up time. And that's one issue. Explain it to them, have an alarm clock, whatever. And the other issue is um showing them, demonstrating, first figuring out in your own mind what you want them to be doing at that time before whatever else is happening. Maybe it's between getting up and breakfast or something. There's something that's going to happen, and you don't want them biting and messing around, goofing off. So what is it that you do want them to be doing at that time? Is it get up and get dressed, make your bed, be down at on the sofa by this time? Or what is
Yeah,
it that
or
you
is
want
it
them doing?
breakfast? Breakfast, for example, sorry, we don't eat breakfast until this moment. I mean, I could see that if you do breakfast, it could easily be you miss breakfast. That's all I can offer to you is that you miss breakfast. Sorry, maybe next time. Now, I will say, as you were talking, it dawned on me, if they're not going to bed at a consistent time, that actually throws off their whole cycle, sleep cycle, etc. But for me, there are certain things that are just givens. Like maybe we sit down and eat dinner together. That's not a thing to incentivize. That's a thing to do. And so the incentive is we do it. If you don't do it, it's going to be a problem. But it's like you need to get yourself up. Do they have a way to do that? A clock, etc. 7 and 9, they're kind of young, get started. But if you wanted to play an incentive game, it would be like the first one up and to finish stuff gets something. I don't know. And so then you kick in competitiveness with them. If they tie, then what would you do? Alternate days or give them both the reward or something like that?
Yeah, if they're both doing what you want them to do.
Right.
But that would, yeah.
So let's say I think about Laura. So the boys are motivated. They get to watch like one video, maybe a day or every other day, some little
short thing.
Well, most of the kids actually do this. So one short little thing, movie or clips or what do they like?
Some of them watch animal shows. I don't know.
Yeah. So whatever they have. So it could be that sort of thing. If you two get yourselves up and brush your teeth and do whatever you're supposed to do, by this time, you'll get that show whenever it is, or you set a time, you'll get a show or something they like. And if you don't, then you won't. And it's got to be both of you. So it's a team effort that you both get up and you're both ready and you'll get the show that day. And if you're not, you don't. And something like that, especially if it's intrinsically motivating, they care about it, is bound to work. But some of this, I actually still would go back and say there are things, and my advice would be if you'll look in your life on things that they do because you said we are doing this. Mm-hmm. That's the mindset you want. That this is just a given. This isn't a thing like wearing clothes. And I like to wear clothes. Yeah, that's not a thing. I'm not setting up an incentive to say, hey, if you do wear your clothes so many days in a row, I'm going to give you a popsicle. I would just say, no, this is a standard. This is a minimum. This is a thing. And all we're going to go through is whatever we need to go through to make sure you reach that standard. It is not allowed. We don't do that, or we do
Yeah, and I
this.
think that's really important that Fred's stressing, because you do hear us talk a lot about a carrot and stick and rewarding consequences, especially getting a child into a habit. But there are things like this that, yeah, this is just what we do. And so you sit them down and I haven't been strict on this. This is a new thing we're going to be doing. It's what you're expected. But I still say with that age, and something's in me saying, what is it that you want them to be doing during that time? Is there just some free time? And what are boys going to do? They're going to jump on each other and wrestle and whatever. So is there something you want them to be doing during that time?
Yeah. And maybe they have play period. If y'all want to play, you can get up and play for this period of time, but you got to get up and do it because play's over at that point.
Yeah. Is it that you want them to get up, get dressed, make their bed, be down at breakfast the next time? Maybe it's that you do have some lag time in there. So give them something. Okay, I want y'all both in. I want you here and you here over here doing different things, or
Yeah, and let me add, I think it's great. I think we've probably yammered enough. If
Yeah.
you have more to details, it'd be great about the ADHD piece. So ADHD, so there's this challenge of their mind jumping to different interests, distractibility. It's like they have a lot of focus, but on a lot of different things. And to get things done, they have to keep coming back. And that's the point. You want to train them or teach them to be able to come back. It's not a problem that they drift. We all do. Driving a car, you better drift because you need to be looking both ways, etc. But you still come back and look down the road. I think that is really a key ingredient. But what you're probably wanting to do with a ADHD child I'm just thinking about school and tasks. So what you want to teach them to do, one, is to set a time. If there's no time limit on what they're doing, a task, then what does it matter if their brain jumps around? And what if they indulge that, etc.? It's no big deal. And unless they have a time, they're not going to be able to focus. One of our kids I've shared before who has this challenge would show up, do writing, kind of sleep, semi be awake. I don't know what I would do. And he's a full-time writer now. But he dawdled and slept and couldn't get a sentence down or whatever. And when we finally started setting up a clock and said, look, we want you to write, you got to write a page. Let's say it was a page. And let's see how long it takes. And it wasn't so much you have to do it by this time, but in that case, it was how long does it take you? And he started learning. He could write the whole page in 10 minutes, something like that. And it became a challenge, a focusing challenge. But in general, what you're wanting to ask a child to do is not give their full attention. I think that's a huge mistake. But it's more like 80% of their attention, because what humans do, we all are doing that. We can't focus on any one thing like that intensely. So if they have something else going on that they are allowed to give 20% to, I don't know how to explain this. Some of the training would say just learning to breathe or be present or notice where you are. Like even that, you can spend part of your time just noticing you're doing a thing, or you can look away, but just keep coming back. The majority of your focus, that's how they'll learn to train. If you make it so extreme not that you do this, but that they think that I've got to focus all the time. No brains can do that. And so the brain it'll push that back against that, like a rule. But rather, I want you to give the bulk of your attention to it. Just keep coming back, keep working on it. And yet there's got to be some nature of, are you taking on a challenge to get it done? How long will it take? Or a deadline of when you've got to stop. And if you don't get it done, you're going to have to pick it up later. What we kind of mentioned. Is that enough?
Yeah.
All right, next question. Hey, Dr. Fred, there's a limit to how many children I can homeschool at once. Is there? It's a question. Is there a limit to how many children I can homeschool at once, like 5, 10, or 10, or is there no limit? And how can I combine online schooling, Cambridge curriculum, with homeschooling? So, it's kind of interesting. Mass education would tend to say there are dynamics that happen at certain sizes. So if you get to a giant room of 100 people, you sort of have to lecture. If you got 20 people, it can have a little more lab type aspect to it. But the problem is if you think you're to be the teacher. So if you're a person that has to make them learn or teach them, that's different than what we thought or how we think about it. And that is you're trying to cause them to learn. You're creating an environment where they are essentially teaching themselves. So it's more of I don't think there's a limit, but the game is as you develop it with these kids, they learn to help each other, kind of like the one-room schoolhouse. They learn to help each other if they need help. They learn to do their work. They learn to make progress. You keep up with their own progress. And so a lot of it is with us, it was mostly managing if they distracted each other and if they stayed on their topic. But
Yeah, I know exactly. And we've talked about that a lot of different times. It's if you have, let's say you have 10 kids and you're trying to teach each 10 kids all these, all these different subjects and all, you are not going to be able to do it. So, things like focusing on reading, writing, and arithmetic, knowing that you're not trying to replicate public or any, mass schooling. You
right.
want them to be self-learners. You're encouraging that. They're doing their own, keeping up with their own work, with their own schedules. You're just checking over that to make sure they're doing that. Then yes, you can certainly do homeschool 10 kids.
Yeah,
And
and on combining online schooling with homeschooling, et cetera, all this is going to be dictated by what your goal is. So your goal will dictate your process. Like, what does it mean for a child to be educated, to have mastered a subject, to have learned something? And then you're going to ask, how does the online schooling fit with homeschooling? Online probably has its own plan for you. And so if you can follow it and it makes sense, go for it. Otherwise, you're going to have to fit it into some strategy with some targets. Like it's not so much, honestly, it's much more about I want you to complete, let's say, 5th grade math by the end of the spring. Let's just say that was the goal. Is that close enough?
sure.
And then with that goal set, the actual strategy will sort of appear. It'll sort of be obvious that given what we're going to do at homeschool, online, etc. What we did is set up kind of a scope and sequence for our system, which was 2 hours of math, 2 hours of reading, and an hour of writing. And when I say that time, that included some grading and checking, etc. So and we broke these things up eventually by, they do an hour of math, an hour of reading. They do writing first and an hour of math, hour of reading, hour of reading, hour of math, ended on math because they were motivated to get that done. And then if they're doing math class, it's like, kind of read slower and sleepier and lay down or something. So in that sequence, we always had a certain number of pages we wanted them to read based on their reading skill and the kind of book it was. And we had a certain number of problems that we wanted them to get through in each little segment. And so we had this combination of the number of problems to do and amount of time. And then you had to maintain a 90% or better. So if we discovered that the kids were making 60s on their math, they're probably having too many questions. I mean, too many problems. And so we might back off the problem so they could master it. You might redo a lesson for a day or two until you master it. You've got to get them involved in a process of this regular ongoing activity to get it done. And it's going to be the same thing with online or whatever else. What's your goal? And then does the strategy get you there? But the driver is going to be the goal every time. There's another question. It's very similar. It says, in a way, if I'm unable to have the subject mastered, I find I can't help or teach. And I don't have time to master all the grades and all the subjects while simultaneously guiding my child. Yeah, exactly. You're competing with the school system. So you've got to be an expert on every subject. I've had this conversation a fair bit lately.
Yeah.
And if that's the way it's going to go, you're just in trouble. And eventually you're going to want to find classical model or something else that you're going to get into, or they hire some tutors and they're specialists and things and they teach, because your model is children can't learn without someone teaching them. But I'm going to tell you, you're going to find out when a child is old enough, and if they're motivated this way and they get a phone and they can do like social media, which is not that great of an idea until they're older. If you watch a child that gets a phone, social media, do you master the phone first?
And then instruct them.
Yeah. Do you study how it all works? Do you you have a situation where you have to sit down with them and say, look, this is a phone, this is how it works, and you turn it on this way and you do this and that. You don't do any of that because they're motivated and they'll figure it out. And education is largely the individual figuring it out. Now, what a good tutor can do is guide them, and use that word, guide them in what they need to get done and what they need to wrestle with. But if you have a view of education that they call a tabula rasa, a blank slate, and you've got to write in there, then you have to master all the subjects and do it. You're not going to be able to.
Yeah.
And when they get older, they got to learn to teach themselves stuff anyway. If you can find a class and somebody knows more and you can learn from them, that's beautiful. That's awesome. But if education is about skill development, not content, which is what I understand, it's about skill development. Are they good at reading, writing, arithmetic now, and write? But well, it affects then language. It affects problem solving. It affects communication and comprehension. So there are these skills that come out of those 3 R's, as they say. So when you understand that and you think this way, it's not a tabula rasa, a blank slate that you're writing on. It's more of the Greek Roman idea of educare, to draw out of, to lead out of, to draw it out of it. And so in their mindset, in the classical mindset, it was like they already have knowledge in them. It's tapped into the ether or intergenerational. I don't know how they thought of it exactly. But the nature of the game was that all we have to do with teaching and questions and other stuff is draw it out, let them make connections. And that's the thing. These children, you want a system where they learn to be self-taught. They are their own instructors, and you are creating discipline, and you are modeling that you keep learning, and you give them a resource that allows them, if they follow the process, it'll get them there, whether it's an online thing or Saxon Math or whatever. So all of our kids were this way, like, let's do math.
Our kids passed me when they got to about 10 years old. They passed me, every one of them.
Right. And I didn't teach them, but Brooks finished with his calculus on his 15th birthday, I think it was, or the day before, something like that. And he made a perfect SAT score, learned all that stuff. We didn't teach him.
No,
not in this formal sense. But Tripp did well too, and First did well too, and Laura did fine, and Holmes did well, fine, plenty fine. And all of them caught on and learned, and they figured this out in college and other places too. So it's like, what you are is you're the chief learning officer, not a teacher. You're causing them to learn. All right, so let's see what we got here. Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to shift to your model. How do I manage where they need to be when, follow grade levels? So there's a good question about how do I figure this out? We use something called the Robinson curriculum. There are others out there, but what we found Robinson, I kind of agreed with him like 85%. So that was a help. And Jody wanted a scope and sequence. So they have a game plan. You might check that out and just understand there's an alpha one that's similar to it and others. But it's more about having a regular strategy of what they're going through day in and day out. That's how people master skills. You know, a golfer goes out and hits a certain number of balls a day and does putting and does chipping and then plays and then whatever they do, but it's an ongoing routine. So you get it down, speed of access. So they just know it. And figuring out where they are uh, in our way of thinking was not as tricky because we weren't exactly concerned where they were. Uh, it was a little challenge because they needed to be in a Sunday school, but our system was more about them going at a pace that worked for them, not them dawdling, but them regularly keep doing it. And some of them grabbed onto math a little faster and moved faster, some slower. We didn't care about that. But it was more of a ongoing process that we had that allowed them to catch up, and they all exceeded their friends.
Well, and part of that was also we've talked about before, like in figuring all this out for what you want for your kids, like by the time they went leaving your house, let's say it's 18, what do you want them to have learned? If you want them to be going off to have the opportunity to go off to a university or a college, then you want to look at go on that website and see what those basics are. Oh, they will need 4 Englishes and to reach this part in math and that kind of, then you work backwards. Okay, this is where I'd like to get my kids to by age 18. So what's the progress? You know, oh my gosh, they're 17, but they've only finished 5th grade math. Well, you know, so, but that helps you to kind of work backwards from what you want them to accomplish. And there's plenty, I mean, yeah, you can find some
good. So they had basically I don't have to teach my children math differential equations or whatever, but bring them to teach themselves and each other. But how does one start? How do I start with me teaching first? And then adds the reason I want to combine homeschool and online schooling is because don't the children need a high school or IB diploma? I guess that says a degree, something to apply for university if they want to. So the laws in the states vary. So you have to find out what the game is in your state.
Yes.
In Texas, it was not that way. Most schools don't actually, I mean, a diploma is fine. We gave them a diploma.
You make it up.
Yeah. We gave them a diploma. We kept records. We had grades. We had those things they could submit. Their SAT or ACT scores were important. For a while, they were backing off, but I just recently read, as predicted, they were going back and saying, yeah, we can't do this. We have to have some objective measure. You just can't tell. Even in Texas, they take the top students. You know, you're automatically in the Texas system if you're in the top 5% or 8% or whatever it is now. But even that varies. So a school in one city or one town or one area is not the same as any one. So these students, there's still a problem with making sure kids that can do engineering get into engineering. That's part of the game. But normally schools, all universities have processes for how homeschoolers get in.
Right.
And so if you figure the schools they're interested in, just call them and find out what's the game. What do we need to do? How does this work? Because there's enough history now to know these homeschool students do great in college, and they have mechanisms for how you transition them in.
Yeah, that's not I mean, that used to be a big thing, like, oh my gosh, what do we do with these homeschool kids? But nowadays, like Fred said, most colleges have that as you could probably even look on the website before you call them and figure out what it is that you need to show them that your child is ready for college. And it's the state, what state are you in? Find out those rules things. And all. But most
just do a little research, ask around, but make sure it's local or it's the schools you want them to go to. What's that going to take?
And ask other people whose homeschoolers have gone on.
Yeah.
How'd you do it? What'd you
especially in your area, in your world.
Yes.
And online will help too. But your world is going to be the world they've circumnavigated. So it's going to be great.
So I don't know that there's any big difference in a college. What I understood is that homeschoolers are kind of the way most colleges think of them as private, unaccredited private school. Like your kid went to an unaccredited private school if you were a homeschooler.
Right. And it was a little trickier for some of our kids to get in the college they wanted. A couple, well, they got in a transition program, went to UTSA for a year, and one went to North Texas, but both after that transferred in the University of Texas in Austin and graduated because either the system set it up or they proved they could do it. Whatever the game was, it's a little trickier for homeschoolers, but that's the game. So this other part of this question, I don't have to teach my children math differential equations. Yeah, you don't have to, and you probably can't anyway. And by the way, if they're struggling with something, you still can get a tutor. It's funny, tutors 101 are like the solution when education fails. But on balance, if you've got a good program and they're progressing incrementally, they're going to learn. They're going to figure this stuff out. And you've got, you've got Khan Academy and all kinds of resources online that can help them sort it out. But when a human being figures out for themselves something, they really know it. They really learned it. When they hear you take your notes, pass the test, and go on, they tend to forget it. So whatever, let's say, bring them to teach themselves and each other. How does one start? How do I start with teaching first? So there are foundation things all kids need. They need to learn to read, right? They're going to need to learn numbers at some point, right? They're going to need to learn to write. These are all those basic things you're going to have to teach them.
You will be teaching them.
Yeah, you will be teaching them those things. And even that teaching is them practicing and figuring out and making sense of it as well. But once they get that down, then you start in an incremental system. And an incremental system means like books. You don't start with War and Peace. You start with Go Dog Go, or I don't know what it is. But there's a progression of more challenging books, more challenging math problems, and it's built on what they can do. When they write, they're starting out with copy work. So they're just copying stuff. Then they can move up, start writing their own stuff. Maybe it's just some sentences at first. Then it can be a paragraph. Then it can be a whole story, etc. But when you think this way, that you're not trying to have them arrive today, you're trying to get them to be engaged in a process where they know they've learned more by the end of the day than before they started. They know more today than they did yesterday.
Right. And I mean, with math, especially if you're just trying to do it without a curriculum, that's a whole nother thing. But if you're using a curriculum and you've been using, especially if you haven't changed every year, so a lot of times you just say, okay, let's go back. If you're not understanding this, it's probably that you don't understand something that you needed to get here. So let's go back and see if there's any gaps here. There's a lot of different curriculums, a lot of people's opinion on curriculum. We use Saxon math, and I still say it was a great math. Like Fred said, Khan Academy is a free resource on the internet that can help you with a specific math problem, like a specific part of math even.
Yeah. But it's always that stuff. It's always building. It's always stretching, improving. One of the ways you like to think about it, and we'll kind of stop here, but you're wanting there's a relationship, you could draw it on a chart, between how big of a challenge and what their skill level is. And you want to meet these in the middle. So if you give them too big a challenge for their skills, it'll just generate anxiety. If you give them too small of a challenge, they're way more, make them read a too easy book, they'll be bored. So you're always looking at where are they? And you just have to figure out. You can usually do that by having them read, having them do some math problems at a certain level. If they can get them done, you sort of going to know where they are. And when you find where they can't do them, that sort of gives you a hint. Understanding that and that philosophy of saying, you've got to learn it. And I'm going to be here to help you, and we're going to coach you. So like with math, my kids would come and say, Daddy, I need help with math. And I'd say, great. What does the book say? Or where is it? And they'd show me. I said, well, read it out loud. And they'd read out loud. And usually they go, oh, if they didn't, I'd say, so where's the problem? And then I'd say, okay, we'll work it out loud. Like start over and let me hear what you're thinking. Each thing you do, just say out loud. And then usually they go, oh, and if not, I would help them. I'd say, no, it's this thing. You got to do that. You got to do the parenthesis this way or whatever it was. And what happened with all my kids is they went, I do not have time to teach this old man math and myself. I might as well just figure it out. And then they started helping each other when they had older, been through it and said, wait, how does this work again?
Yeah, the higher level math.
Yeah, how does that game work? And I remember one of our sons missed, I think it was differentials. And so he one afternoon spent 2 or 3 hours on the phone with his 3 year younger brother, who's finally graduated with a degree in math and economics, but he was really good at it. And he went through it and taught him, tutored him and how to do differentials in college that he had kind of not paid attention to or slipped by. I don't know what it was. Or, it'd been so long he'd forgotten. And then of course this child that was one at home, he said, oh my gosh, I just realized differentials really help business because why? And he went, oh, predictive. Like they both learned something that was really quite cool. By the way, I'm just 21-year-old dental student studying in Germany. I plan to use this to homeschool my younger brothers. It's also like practice for me. Well, that's excellent.
That's great.
Yeah, and so even with them, it's the same game where we want you to learn how to teach yourself. And this is an important skill, especially in this crazy world, because most of us don't have one career all our lives. Last time I looked, in 10 years after college, let's say, 85% of people are in a career different than they studied for. It's usually accountants and engineers are the same thing. But most everybody else, like in some degrees, I studied literature. What do you do with that? If you don't teach, I use it all the time. My superpowers, my ability to read. Works on contracts, works on communicating, works on problem solving, works on all kinds of stuff. So that's the game. All right. Hope this was helpful. Any last thing you want to say?
No, just keep sending us questions.
Yep. Join us next week. There's a good shot. We may not be on next week. It's in our world, it's Good Friday. And so it'd be difficult for us, I think, to go to that service.
Yes.
So
I thought of that.
We may have a Easter weekend break. Anyway, hope this is helpful. Pass it along to others. And if you want some of our free stuff, go to independenthomeschool.com and just sign up. You can unsign anytime, but we send you videos and some other resources that you have access to. All right. Have a great weekend.